Hey, great. How we doing? It is about to get hectic. We've been talking about the Boston Tea Party and the Boston Massacre and stuff this week. And because of this growing tension and whatnot, we are going to now look at and see just what's going on and how the colonists are playing this game. Because we're in kind of a chess match with the British, and the leadership is really, you know, trying to work out a way to change this. But what nobody is talking about, and what you and I know are coming because it's after the fact, is nobody is actually talking about revolution or independence. And I want you to pick up on that. Nobody really wants to fight. They just want representation. And so, this becomes kind of the rallying cry, if you will. Don't tread on me. Don't tread on my rights. Don't, hurt us. And it's really kind of like a really bad argument. And so we're going to be looking at what's going on here. There was a Continental Congress that got formed of local colonial leaders, and they wanted to establish a political group, basically creating the representation that we keep asking for. We keep saying no taxation without representation. Guys like Patrick Henry are saying that. Guys like Samuel Adams are saying that. And so they want somebody who will fight politically to fight for American interests and challenge British rule. It goes back to taxation and all that other stuff. So some of the people that go to this, you've got Sam Adams, you've got John Adams, the cousins, you got John Jay, Richard Henry Lee. If you don't know who that is, maybe you've heard of Robert E. Lee. He's going to be a big general in the Civil War. Patrick Henry's there. And then, of course, George Washington. And so these guys are all meeting. But again, they're working on a way to get representation for the colonies, okay? So again, just looking at cause and effect and how things are going here. Remember, they've repealed taxes, but this becomes a cause. So then they have the Boston Tea Party. After the Boston Tea Party, Britain gets angry. You have the coercive acts, the intolerable acts. Now we're here. The first Continental Congress drafts a statement of grievances. And it's a statement of grievances just like, hey, we feel like this is unfair. And then eventually you're going to see some fighting, and then we're going to get into the Declaration of Independence big time. So British also prepared themselves. That kind of went too far. The British are also looking at this, and they're looking for a peaceful resolution. But the delegates are working together, and they put together this statement called a draft of grievances. And when you look at the draft of grievances, it basically just, discusses all of the things. It talks about the taxation. It talks about the Molasses Act and the Quartering Act and the Stamp Act and all of these things. And they're asking for these 13 laws to be repealed by Parliament. They also vote to collectively boycott anything British. Now, here's where it gets a little hairy. They passed something known as the Suffolk Resolves, and nobody talks about this a whole lot, but the Suffolk Resolves is a big decision. The Suffolk Resolves, in this list of grievances, said that colonists could form their own militias, in other words, fighting army, so that they could defend their homes and arm themselves in case the British show up. That's not a good look. The British are going to look at that and say, well, now you guys are talking about actually arming yourselves. And so that's really going to be controversial, especially in Britain. Now, in the United States, in the colonies, we're sitting here going, well, this is normal. This is what we have to do. We're doing this to keep safe. But the British are going to look at this as, frankly, an act of war. So when the British see that, they start to prepare themselves for battle too. They send in Thomas Gage, who's one of their top generals. He brings in like 6,000 soldiers. They come in, they surround Boston, and his orders are to take away and arrest any militia leaders, arrest those people, and find any weapons, confiscate them, and put them away. This is the famous Paul Revere Rhine. You've probably heard of Paul Revere. You probably haven't heard of William Dawes, but basically what happens is there's three guys that actually do this, and they go out, one if by land and two if by sea. You probably know the poem by Longfellow, but they left Concord, Massachusetts, and they were going because they said, hey, look, Sam Adams, John Hancock, you're the leaders of the Sons of Liberty. They're coming for you. So what happens is Dawes goes out and he goes through Cambridge and goes through up here. Revere makes it through Charleston and Medford. But what I want you to pick up on is the guy that actually saves Samuel Adams and saves, the leaders of the Sons of Liberty is neither Paul Revere nor Mr. Dawes. It's actually this guy by the name of Prescott. Prescott is actually the guy that gets, our John Hancock and Samuel Adams out of danger. And what happens is the British troops are going to follow. All right. And so, Paul Revere was sitting in a jail. So, but, Paul Revere's name rhymes with midnight clear. I guess that's what Longfellow was talking about. We'll talk more about when we're in person about the poem of Paul Revere and how it kind of shapes how we view American history. There's early battles. Now, the Redcoats, the British, are coming from Lexington. They continue to Concord, and they find gunpowder has been removed. They find that supplies have been evacuated, and they also see a group of people known as the Minutemen. And the Minutemen are people who are supposed to be available at a moment's notice in case the British are coming. These are the militia. These are the people mentioned in the Suffolk's Resolves that are going to fight the British off in case we have something coming. And so they're sitting there, and they are there to greet the British when they're coming in. And what happens is the British actually, it's a wild story. The British actually tell the men to stand down and go away, and they do. They disperse. He says, disperse ye rebels, you don't need to go here. And the guys actually turn around, but a gunshot goes off. We don't know who fired. We don't know if it's a British soldier. We don't know if it's an American soldier, but somebody fired a shot. And when that happened, it leads to a battle. And this battle is the Battle of Lexington Concord. Now, a lot of people say that these battles, the battles of Lexington Concord, are the start of the American Revolution. Keep in mind, we haven't declared independence yet. All right, this is seen as the start of it, but we're not going to call it the start of the American Revolution until after the war is over. There's other people like the Green Mountain Boys and Ethan Allen. They capture a British fort, Fort Ticonderoga, and they basically capture the cannons and start bringing them down so the militia can have cannons. So they're arming, they're fighting, they're going for it. Because of this story and because of the British fighting, 20,000 volunteers come out to enlist as volunteers in what we're going to call a new army. It's going to become the Continental Army. And they're going to fight at a place called the Battle of Bunker Hill. Now, the Battle of Bunker Hill is the first major big fight out here on the American Revolution. But again, I want you to look at that. Look at that year, 1775. We don't declare independence until July 4th of 1776. So it's another year before we declare independence. And even though the British are going to win the battle, they suffer massive losses, and the Americans actually gain a lot of respect on the battlefield. So you've got some interesting stuff going on here. This is a painting of the Battle of Bunker Hill. They literally ran out of ammunition on this. So the British, not respecting American militia or American volunteers because of what happened in the 7 Years' War, they think these are just a bunch of ragtag guys. They charge head on 5 times. And literally the Americans are able to repel them every time until they run out of ammunition. When they run out of ammo, well, that's never good when you run out of ammo in a war. So the Americans begin to choose sides. And what I want you to pick up on is that there's a lot of people that wanted to fight the British, and they are saying it now's independence. Now is the talk for independence. And we're going to call these people patriots in history. The British are call them rebels. There's also loyalists, and they want to remain with Britain. All right. And I want you to pick up on this. The loyalists make up about 30% of the population, 33% of the population, 1/3. And there's only about 1/3 of the people that want independence. And then there's the other third, the people that I always say decide history, the undecideds. They don't know what they want. So there's got to be something that kind of sways them to think one way or the other. The Second Continental Congress is then going to meet again. This is May 10th, 1775. And a lot of people are talking about independence now. Should we go for independence? This time you have more people show up. Maybe you've heard of Ben Franklin, John Hancock's there, Thomas Jefferson's there, and the Congress decides they're going to represent the colonies and they will govern the colonies. So they're going to do stuff that governments do. They're going to print money. They're going to build post offices, and they establish an army led by none other than George Washington. All right. And so Washington is going to be named the commander. He's really the only guy, if you've looked at any of these guys, with military experience. And then they send a formal request to King George asking for the king to protect the colonist rights. This is called the Olive Branch Petition, and this is what the Second Continental Congress scores. Now, what happens is they write this, and it's, oh, dear king, our most beloved sovereign, we, your loyal subjects, humbly beseech you to help us in this time. This evil governor's being mean to us. The British soldiers are being mean to us. But if you're King George, you're looking at this and going, okay, you're telling me you love me. You're telling me you're loyal, but you're shooting at soldiers in Lexington and Concord, and you're fighting battles at Bunker Hill. I don't see loyalty. So you got to look at this from both sides. Does the king accept this olive branch petition, because a lot of people were sitting there going, hey, we need to do this. John Adams is screaming we need to declare independence, and he ends up losing the article to the delegation from Pennsylvania. And they end up writing this olive branch petition. And what happens is Washington has to leave. He starts training the army. By this time it's March. He's going to start going out there. He says that they have soldiers that aren't fit to polish boots. It's kind of a mess. The British go and sail out to Halifax, Nova Scotia, because Washington's kind of able to bluff them out of Boston. And then there's an attack on New York by the British, and the British come in and take New York very quickly. American troops failed to take, we invade Canada, they failed to take Quebec. And when you look at it, it looks like we're fighting, but notice what we haven't done yet. We haven't declared independence yet. It's kind of funky. So what I want you to pick up on is this desire for us to work something out, but our actions are saying something else to the king. So the king is looking at this like, okay, you're saying you're loyal, but you're fighting my soldiers and you're killing our soldiers. The British and the colonists are sitting there going, we want to be loyal, but you're sending more soldiers over here, and it's just making the situation worse. So both sides have very valid points on why they feel the way they do about this. And you look at it and you kind of think, man, it's kind of unfortunate they have this kind of situation set up. So this is going to be an ed puzzle today. We're going to kind of keep it easy today, but this will also be your last graded assignment for this. We're going to talk about our remote schedule, our in-person schedule again. I'm going to show you where to find that stuff if you're learning remotely, and what we're going to be doing in person at the Zoom. All right, I will talk to you later, guys. Take care. Bye.